The joy of thanking an old teacher. Reaching out to an old teacher to thank them is one of those gestures that seems small on the surface, but it carries tremendous emotional depth for both sides. When you decide to contact a teacher from your past, you're doing far more than sending a polite note. You're reconnecting with a part of your own story. You're acknowledging that your growth did not happen in isolation, and that someone took the time to guide you at a moment when you were still figuring out who you were and who you wanted to become. The joy begins quietly, often long before you write that first sentence. It starts the moment you think back to that teacher's classroom. You can almost hear the hum of the room again, the shuffle of paper, the scratch of pencils, the sound of that teacher's voice explaining a concept that seemed impossibly difficult until, suddenly, it clicked. Maybe you remember the way they wrote on the board, or the jokes they slipped into lessons, or the way they seemed to notice when a student was having a tough day. In recalling these details, you're reminded that education is not just the transfer of information. It's a relationship, and relationships, even when they end years ago, can echo long into adulthood. Sometimes what resurfaces isn't even an academic memory at all. It might be the moment a teacher pulled you aside and said they believed in your potential. Or the time they encouraged you to try something new, a school play, a science fair, a piece of writing, because they sensed you had a spark you hadn't recognized yet. Teachers often see things in us before we can see them in ourselves. Realizing this, years later, can stir a powerful sense of gratitude. You begin to understand that a single supportive sentence can influence the direction of your life more than you realized at the time. Then comes the act of reaching out. Even drafting a message of thanks can feel strangely uplifting. You might start with hesitation. What do I say? Will they even remember me? But as you write, your confidence grows. Gratitude has a way of settling your thoughts. You begin describing what you remember and why it mattered, and suddenly the words flow more easily. It feels good to tell the truth about someone's impact. It feels grounding. It feels human. There's also a kind of emotional clarity that comes with thanking a teacher. You may find yourself recalling accomplishments, habits, or life decisions that can be traced back to the skills or confidence they helped you build. Maybe a love of reading started in their class. Maybe your approach to problem solving came from their steady guidance. Maybe they were the first adult who treated you like your opinions mattered. A thank you message becomes more than appreciation. It becomes a way to acknowledge how someone helped shape the arc of your life. The moment you send the message can be surprisingly moving. It carries a sense of completion, as if you're setting a positive piece of your past gently back into place. You aren't asking for anything. You aren't hoping for anything in return. You're simply offering kindness, freely, to someone who offered you kindness too long ago. There is a quiet strength in that. And then there's the teacher's response. For many teachers, messages like this are rare gifts. Most students move on with their lives, and teachers often wonder whether their efforts made a difference. They spend years encouraging, explaining, correcting, listening, yet they may never know how their work rippled outward. When a former student reaches out, it breaks through the routine of grading papers and planning lessons. It reminds them that the hours they invested were not just tasks, they were acts of influence. Teachers read these messages with a mixture of surprise and warmth. Some will write back immediately, delighted that you remembered them. Others may take a little time to respond, gathering their thoughts because the message genuinely moved them. In either case, the reaction often carries something soft and sincere. Gratitude that you reached out, curiosity about your life, and pride that they played even a small part in the person you've become. There is a powerful reciprocity in that moment. Your message gives the teacher a sense of purpose and completion. Their response affirms your growth and reminds you that you came from a lineage of people who cared. The circle closes. not in a sentimental way, but in a grounded, deeply human one. You thank them for helping you become yourself, and they thank you for letting them know their efforts were not lost to time. Reaching out to an old teacher also shows something about who you are now. It signals maturity, the ability to look back and recognize the people that lifted you up. Gratitude is a form of self-awareness. It requires you to think about your journey, to see the hands that steadied you, and to admit that part of your success was supported by others. That recognition brings its own joy, because it connects you to something larger than your individual achievements, on a broader level. Contacting a teacher reminds us that learning is a shared endeavor. None of us travels through knowledge alone. Every skill we possess, every insight we use carries the fingerprints of those who taught us. When you thank a teacher, you are honoring that chain. You are acknowledging that teaching is an act of generosity that often goes unspoken. In the end, the joy of contacting an old teacher lies in its simplicity. It's a message, a memory, a moment of connection. Yet within that simplicity is something profound, a reminder that gratitude strengthens the strands of our past and brings meaning into our present. It illuminates how quietly, how steadily, and how beautifully teachers help shape the people we become. This text is donated to the public domain.